So, continuing on with the Best Life Possible series, today's devotional is entitled Listening for the Voice of God. Something different. I'm going to split this up over multiple days because there's just too much to cover in a single time of video or what I can put on the web in terms of text. So, listening for the voice of God. This is part 1. The scripture comes out of Matthew chapter 9, where Jesus, upon seeing the people, had great compassion upon them. Of all the things that are important in the Christian life, things that are necessary and helpful, there are none more vital, nor can anything compare with learning to listen for the voice of God. For he speaks not as men speak, because he's spirit. And he can't be heard as we hear men speak, because, again, he is spirit. And unlike men, when he speaks, he does so with a purpose, driven by his intense love for humanity and for his creation. But he does speak. So I need to tell you a story. I'm in the hospital with a friend of mine visiting his mother, who has ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, and it's a disease that has ravaged her body. But this is a place I want to be. I've grown to love visits like these and places like these, because these are where Jesus would be when he walked the earth. Places he still wants to be, wherever there is great need. And so here I am. Now I'm his hands, I'm his feet, I'm his eyes, and I love where I'm at. As I began to talk to my friend sitting in the room, suddenly the sound of his children by the side of their grandmother is quickly silenced by a terrible moaning and groaning and thrashing with someone in the bed next to us. Now the curtain is mostly drawn in a semi-private room and I can't see who it is. But in an instant, I am crushed with this tremendous feeling of, overwhelming feeling of compassion at the sound of what I'm hearing, but it's more than what I would normally sense or feel, because I've been in this place before. I quickly looked at my friend, and as we looked at each other, he knew, because he's been with me in these circumstances, that God, at least we're hoping that God was about to speak. I knew that he was, so I got up and went to the other side of the curtain, and there was a woman at the foot of the bed, and I hadn't looked to the right yet with all this sound and commotion, and I asked her, I said, I apologize for an intrusion now, but could I pray for your loved one? She looked a little surprised, but looked over towards the bed and said, Dad, would that be okay? And as I turned to look at him, I caught my first image of this very, very old woman in bed who was moaning and thrashing, and she was skin over bones. I mean, literally bones protruding from her skin. She probably didn't weigh hardly anything. Half of her hair was missing, and one of her eyes was missing as well. I instantly was overcome with a tremendous sense of love and compassion once again, beyond what I felt was normal even for this circumstance. And as I looked over at what would have been her husband, the lady's father, he simply said yes. I knew God was about to speak, not with words, but with emotion, compassion, and a necessary reaching for this person. I went beside the bed where she was. I grabbed her by her arm and knelt on one knee. And quickly a sense of loss came over me, and that I almost lost the sense of who I was, and the sense of that I was actually there. And words began to come out of my mouth, and I was aware that I was speaking, but not all that I was saying. And I could hear words like peace to this body, rest to this body, healing to this body. And as these words flowed out from my mouth, the thrashing became less, and the moaning and groaning became less, and the words flowed, and finally the thrashing and the moaning stopped, and there was this sense of calm and rest as she laid her head back into the pillow and was quiet. As I stood up off the one knee and looked at her husband, who had tears in his eyes, and towards the foot of the bed where the daughter was, I was keenly aware of this tremendous sense of peace and love. I'm not sure if it was in me or just in the room, but it was beyond the normal. As I looked at the woman, she was crying. And she said, "My mother has been like this for the last 12 hours. And she looked at me with such love and said, "Who are you?" Sorry. So I'm going to continue this tomorrow, the rest of the story and the rest of teaching about listening for the voice of God.